It begins with a sound. Not the roar of a rocket, nor the hum of an engine, but a metallic echo that trembled across the void of space, recorded not by myth, but by men. When the Apollo 12 mission struck its lunar module against the surface of the moon in 1969, the gray dust shook, and then the moon rang, not for seconds, but for nearly an hour. The NASA seismographs called it a bell-like resonance, an event that baffled the scientists who logged it. The moon should have absorbed the impact like a solid body. Instead, it vibrated, hollow, metallic, as if something vast and engineered lurked beneath its crust. That single moment, forgotten in the footnotes of history, ignited one of the strangest questions ever asked about our nearest celestial companion. What if the moon is not what it seems? What if it was built? Beneath its pale light, poets have written of madness and love. But across ancient texts, myths, and coded relics, the moon has always been more than a rock in the sky. To the Sumerians, it was Nana, the celestial architect who measured time. To the Dogon of Mali, it was a vessel for gods. To modern astronomers, it is an enigma, a satellite too large, too precise, too improbable to be a mere accident of cosmic chance. Its orbit is almost perfectly circular. Its size, when viewed from Earth, matches the Sun's disk so precisely that eclipses appear as miracles of geometry. Its density is anomalously low, its core strangely light. And its age? Some samples brought back by Apollo are older than the Earth's crust itself. It is as though the moon did not form with us, but arrived later, parked, positioned, and set into motion by hands unknown. In the shadows of its craters lie whispers of something forgotten, of construction, of purpose, of observation. Who placed it there, and why? This is the mystery we are about to enter. This is historic sleep. Welcome. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right, and let me know in the comments where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now. I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. It begins not with a discovery, but with a question that refuses to die. How could something as old, as silent, and as familiar as the moon still hold secrets we cannot explain? It hangs there every night, unchanging, loyal, almost too perfect. For centuries, its face has been mapped, worshipped, and measured. Yet beneath all the numbers and names lies a riddle no telescope can erase. The moon should not be where it is. According to classical astrophysics, moons are born in one of three ways. Some condense from the same cloud of gas and dust as their parent planet. Others are captured by gravity after wandering too close, and a few are the aftermath of catastrophic collisions. Earth's moon, we were told, belonged to the third category, a remnant of a violent impact some 4.5 billion years ago, when a Mars-sized body called Theia collided with the young Earth, ejecting molten debris that eventually cooled into our satellite. It is an elegant theory, until one looks too closely. The isotopic fingerprints of lunar rocks, collected by Apollo astronauts, are virtually identical to those on Earth. Not similar, not close. Identical. If the moon were formed from a random impactor, its composition should bear at least some trace of alien chemistry. But it doesn't. It is, chemically speaking, the Earth's twin, yet it orbits as though it were not born here. The moon's orbit adds another crack in the story. Unlike most satellites, which spin and drift along eccentric paths, the Moon's orbit is nearly circular. Its center of mass is not aligned with its geometric center. It is gravitationally locked to show only one face to Earth, a synchronization so exact it seems engineered. Astronomer Carl Sagan once cautioned that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but he also admitted that the Moon's existence was extraordinarily peculiar. Even he could not deny the precision. Then there is its size. Relative to Earth, our Moon is enormous, far larger than any known satellite compared to its planet. No other world in the solar system has such a relationship. The ratio allows perfect eclipses, where the Sun and Moon align with mathematical symmetry, their apparent diameters matching exactly when viewed from the ground. For many ancient civilizations, this was no coincidence. It was a sign. The heavens, they believed, had been designed. Long before telescopes or rockets, priests and astronomers of Sumer, Egypt, and Mesoamerica treated the Moon as a clock of divine intent. Its cycles governed tides, fertility, and ritual calendars. But some myths went further. The Zulu people of southern Africa spoke of a time before the Moon, when the world was bathed in perpetual twilight and the rains were endless. In their oral tradition, two brothers, Wowane and Mpanku, rolled the Moon across the sky after stealing it from a distant place, placing it into orbit around Earth to bring balance. In the Andes, the Inca told of Mama Killa, a luminous being who appeared suddenly in the heavens to watch over humankind. The Greek said that before Selene, there was a time when the night was starless. Even the Bible hints that the Moon was set in the firmament, as though it were positioned deliberately. Modern scientists dismissed these stories as metaphor, yet their consistency across continents is unsettling. How could cultures separated by oceans describe a world without a moon? And why do so many myths describe it as something introduced, a gift, a theft, or a mechanism of control? In 1970, two Soviet scientists, Michael Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, published a paper in Sputnik magazine that shocked the academic world. Their theory, though dismissed as science fiction, was unnervingly detailed. They proposed that the Moon was not a natural satellite at all, but a colossal artificial structure. An ancient vessel or observation post built by an unknown intelligence. The article, titled, "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" suggested that the Moon's crust, far thicker on the far side than the near, might be armor plating, that its craters, unusually shallow regardless of size, might result from impacts against a reinforced hull, and that its hollow resonance during Apollo seismic experiments indicated vast internal cavities. NASA's own data had, unintentionally, fueled their speculation. During Apollo 12's moonquake test, when the ascent stage of the lunar module was crashed into the surface, the Moon reverberated like a gong. When the same experiment was repeated during Apollo 13 and 14, the phenomenon recurred. The vibrations lasted for nearly an hour. It was as if the Moon's interior was not solid rock, but a massive resonant shell. The official explanation spoke of density gradients and fractured basalt, yet even NASA's own scientists admitted the event was unlike anything we've observed on Earth. The Moon's density itself is another mystery. At only 60% of Earth's average density, it seems almost unnaturally light for its size. Some areas suggest vast voids or low-density materials beneath the crust. It is as though the interior were hollow, or filled with something less massive than rock. And then there are the magnetic anomalies, irregular patches scattered across the lunar surface, defying explanation. They do not align with impact basins or known geological structures, but appear as though the surface has been magnetized by artificial means long ago. Could the moon have once been a spacecraft? A colossal ark, perhaps, built across the void? Could it have been towed into Earth's orbit to stabilize the planet's rotation, to moderate its tides, and create the perfect conditions for life to flourish? This is where science and myth begin to overlap. In the texts of ancient Sumer, the gods, known as the Anunnaki, descended from Nibiru, a wandering celestial body. They spoke of constructing heavenly stations, of bringing light to the dark. Some fringe researchers, most famously Zecharia Sitchin, interpreted these accounts as descriptions of orbital engineering, of moons or stations placed in the sky to observe the Earth. While mainstream scholars reject these translations, the imagery is hauntingly consistent with the idea of a built satellite. There is also the curious geometry of coincidence. The moon's presence stabilizes Earth's axial tilt, preventing chaotic climate shifts that would render our world uninhabitable. Without it, the day length would vary wildly, the seasons would drift, and life as we know it might never have evolved. If one were to design a planet for life, a stabilizing satellite like the moon would be a logical inclusion. It is as though someone, or something, engineered a system, tuned with impossible precision. Yet, as always, skepticism is a necessary shadow. Scientists counter that coincidence, and natural mechanics can produce wonder without intention. They argue that the circular orbit is the result of tidal locking, that density anomalies stem from uneven cooling, and that the ringing of the moon was a quirk of geology, not engineering. And yet, none of these explanations fully dispel the unease. Why is the far side of the moon so different? Thick-crusted, crater-saturated, ancient, while the near side is smoother, younger, and strangely aligned toward Earth? Why do some craters appear as though carved, not blasted, their walls melted into glass-like rims? Why do massive structures, domes, hexagonal patterns, linear ridges, appear in high-resolution lunar imagery only to be dismissed as illusions of light and shadow? The closer one looks, the more the mystery deepens. The moon is a mirror, reflecting both sunlight and the limits of our understanding. Each attempt to explain it seems to reveal something stranger beneath. Perhaps that is why the question persists. Not because it demands belief, but because it refuses silence. Somewhere within that gray, pitted surface lies the story of how the moon came to be, and whether its presence in our skies was written by chance or by design. If it was placed here, by whom? And for what purpose? In the next chapter, we descend deeper into the records of ancient astronomers, into myths that describe a sky once empty, and into the scientific evidence that hints at an age before the moon's arrival. Keep your eyes on the night sky. It may not be watching us by accident. There is an ancient silence in the question itself. Was there ever a time when the Earth had no moon? It seems impossible now. Our entire rhythm of life is intertwined with its pull. The tides breathe by its gravity, animals migrate by its light, and even our sleep is subtly synchronized to its phases. Yet deep in the memory of the human species, across oral traditions and mythic texts, something strange whispers again and again. The moon arrived. The Sumerians, whose astronomical knowledge still astonishes modern science, never wrote of a time before the moon. But older cultures did. The Zulu stories speak of a great ship that brought the moon, describing how the world was once shrouded in mist, until two sky beings rolled a luminous sphere into place. Among the Maya, inscriptions hint that the goddess Ixchel came from the void to govern the tides, and in the Chibcha myths of Colombia, the moon was said to be a wandering eye, opened suddenly in the heavens to watch humankind. These are not isolated tales. In the ancient Greek tradition, Aristotle himself recorded that certain Arcadian tribes claimed their ancestors lived before there was a moon in the heavens. The poet Apollonius of Rhodes also mentioned proselynes, literally, people before the moon. In the Andes, the old Quechua song spoke of Pachamama weeping in darkness until the silver child was placed beside her. In all of these echoes, the same image persists, the moon as an addition, not an origin. For centuries, such myths were dismissed as poetic invention. Yet in the 20th century, a few scientists began to wonder if they might contain fragments of geological memory. Could the Earth have once spun without a companion, and later gained one through an extraordinary event? And if so, could that event have been natural or engineered? To understand this possibility, we must first consider the mechanics of capture. For a body the size of the moon to be captured by Earth's gravity, two improbable conditions must align. The incoming object must lose velocity through drag or a third-body interaction, and it must approach within a precise range that neither sends it crashing to Earth nor flinging it back into space. The odds of this happening by chance are so vanishingly small that many astronomers have called it impossible. But if the moon was placed, slowed, adjusted, and locked into orbit, the precision suddenly makes sense. When we look at the orbital plane, we find another puzzle. The moon's orbit is tilted by about 5 degrees relative to Earth's equator. It does not align neatly, as would be expected from a shared formation. Instead, it behaves like something that arrived later, something introduced. Even more curious, the moon's orbit is receding at a measurable rate, moving roughly 3.8 centimeters away from Earth each year, as if the original synchronization were gradually loosening. Some physicists have described this drift as the slow unraveling of a finely tuned system. In the 1960s, before the Apollo landings, 2 Russian researchers, Yevgeny Aramovich and Mikhail Chasin, noticed an anomaly in the distribution of lunar craters. The near side and the far side differ not only in thickness, but also in depth ratios inconsistent with random impacts. Some of the largest basins, such as Mare Imbrium, display concentric shock rings that appear almost engineered. The depth remains uniform regardless of the crater's diameter, suggesting that below the surface lies a rigid layer preventing further penetration. When the idea of an armored crust was first mentioned in Soviet journals, it was quietly buried under translation errors and misinterpretations. But in private correspondence, several geophysicists admitted they were baffled. The Apollo missions later confirmed what the Soviets had suspected. The near side's crust averages about 38 kilometers thick, while the far side measures over 80. The asymmetry is inexplicable under the standard formation model. Some scientists proposed that early tidal heating caused the imbalance, but simulations failed to reproduce it. Others whispered of an external process. Perhaps the side facing Earth had been deliberately thinned to regulate reflectivity or resonance. And then there is that resonance itself. When the seismic readings from Apollo were analyzed in 1970, one phrase appeared again and again in the technical memos: long-duration reverberations. The data didn't just show an echo. It showed a sustained, decaying oscillation lasting nearly an hour, as if energy were bouncing around a hollow cavity. The experiment was repeated several times. The results were identical. The moon, in acoustic terms, behaved like a bell, one that had been struck. If this were simply the product of fractured rock or low-density crust, we would expect random patterns of vibration. But the seismographs revealed harmonic frequencies, layered tones, mathematically consistent, almost musical. It was as though the moon had been designed to ring, to respond to impact in a controlled manner. NASA's own Dr. Gordon MacDonald once remarked, "It would seem that the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere." His words were later softened in official transcripts, but the statement remains in archived interviews. At the same time, certain satellite images began to reveal structures that challenged the imagination: linear ridges stretching for hundreds of miles, geometric depressions, domes rising from the Maria Plains. Most were explained as volcanic or tectonic remnants. Yet some of them, like the Ina D formation, defy such explanations. Ina D appears as a D-shaped depression with razor-sharp edges, no impact ejecta, and a surface too young for the surrounding terrain. It looks, some have said, like a hatch. Even more unsettling are the magnetic anomalies. On a world with no global magnetic field, certain regions emit intense localized magnetism. One of the strongest lies beneath the crater Reiner Gamma, where a swirling, luminous pattern can be seen from orbit, its albedo contrasting sharply against the basalt plain. It looks burned, etched, almost artificial. Some researchers in the 1970s suggested that Reiner Gamma could be the site of an ancient energy event, perhaps a magnetic propulsion system or reactor long dormant. That idea, of course, vanished from mainstream publications almost overnight. But privately, a few astronomers admitted that the pattern was unique in the solar system. Nothing else like it has been found on any other planetary body. And so the story deepens. If the moon is truly hollow, or partially hollow, then we must ask, hollow for what? A ship? A base? A mechanism? Or perhaps something more subtle? A resonance chamber designed to interact with the Earth below. Some physicists have theorized that the moon's mass and position influence not only the tides, but the electromagnetic field of the planet, subtly affecting biological rhythms and even tectonic stability. If that were by design, the implications would be profound. Ancient texts might hint at such knowledge. The Sanskrit Vedas describe a silver sphere that hums the song of life, placed in the heavens by the Devas. The Egyptian coffin texts speak of Thoth measuring time with the eye of Horus, a celestial instrument of perfect geometry. And in early Chinese mythology, Chang'e does not ascend to the moon. She becomes one with it, embodying its machinery of renewal. These metaphors could conceal ancient observations of the moon's influence long before modern physics gave it numbers. Still, the rational mind protests. Could all this truly point to design? Or are we, as always, haunted by our tendency to find purpose in randomness? The skeptic might say that humanity projects meaning onto chaos. Yet the skeptic must also face the data, the symmetry of eclipses, the impossible balance of mass, the synchronized orbit, the ringing, and the precise distance that allows the moon to appear exactly the same size as the sun from Earth's perspective. If the universe is indifferent, it hides its indifference behind extraordinary coincidence. The moon, perhaps, is a mirror for consciousness. When we look up, we do not see just a satellite. We see the reflection of our own search for order. But the moon's silence is older than our questions. It has been there long enough to make every theory feel small. And yet, there remains one final riddle that science cannot neatly fold away. If the moon truly originated from Earth, why do some of its minerals predate the planet's oldest rocks? Zircon grains recovered from lunar samples have been dated to over 4.6 billion years, 200 million years older than the first solid crust on Earth. Where could such ancient material have come from? Perhaps the moon was not built after Earth, but brought here from another world, another system, another age. Perhaps it carries within it the fossils of an extinct civilization, sealed behind kilometers of basalt. Or perhaps it is something far stranger, a relic from a forgotten epoch of our own planet, preserved when a prior age of gods and engineers perished in a cataclysm we no longer remember. Every culture has its deluge, its fall, its return of the light. Maybe the moon is the last survivor of that story, an arc of memory circling endlessly above the children who forgot. In the next part, the journey turns toward those forgotten epochs, the ancient cataclysms, the celestial wars described in myth, and the strange alignment of craters and ruins that hint at a purpose older than humanity itself. Until then, the moon continues to watch us, motionless, patient, almost listening. It begins in the dust, fine, gray, almost weightless. The surface of the moon, lifeless and airless, has kept its secrets longer than any desert on Earth. But in that stillness, beneath the quiet powder and shattered glass, lies a strange kind of record, a geological diary written in slow motion across billions of years. Each crater, each ridge, each inexplicable mark on its surface tells a fragment of a story that doesn't quite fit the model we have built to explain it. When the first high-resolution photographs from the lunar orbiter missions arrived in the late 1960s, the scientists expected chaos, random impacts, shattered planes, natural debris. What they found instead were patterns, geometries, structures that appeared, in some places, astonishingly regular. Hexagonal formations where no tectonic forces exist, craters arranged in nearly perfect straight lines, and ridges that curve and repeat as though etched with intent. In the desolate Mare Tranquillitatis, long before Apollo 11 landed, one image captured what appeared to be a rectangular enclosure nearly 2 miles wide. NASA labeled it a shadow anomaly. But to those who saw the original film reels under magnification, the edges seemed too clean, too precise, too deliberate. Even stranger were the so-called domes, transparent-looking hemispherical shapes found in multiple regions, Mare Crisium, Sinus Medi, and near the crater Copernicus. Some of them cast shadows inconsistent with their surroundings, suggesting they were not optical illusions or simple ridges of rock. In the early 1970s, when Soviet astronomers published their independent lunar imagery, several of these structures reappeared. Same coordinates, same shapes, same silence. One astrophysicist, Dr. Nikolai Kozyrev, noted that certain domes reflected light differently from lunar basalt, almost as if made of glassy material. He stopped publishing about it soon after. The moon, it seemed, was not as dead as we thought. During the Apollo era, astronauts reported something else: fleeting flashes of light, glowing mists, and strange, transient lunar phenomena. Officially, they were explained as static discharges or micrometeorite impacts, but some of these glows appeared in the same places repeatedly, sometimes lasting hours. The Aristarchus crater, in particular, was famous for it. The crew of Apollo 11 even observed a bright, bluish glow coming from within its rim. Aristarchus is the most reflective feature on the near side, a glaring wound of white rock visible even to the naked eye. It is also surrounded by magnetic anomalies, high-energy radiation, and a shallow crust unlike any other region. If the Moon were once an engineered body, Aristarchus might well be its control room, or what remains of it. Then came the sounds. When the seismic instruments left by the Apollo missions continued recording, long after the astronauts returned home, they detected recurring vibrations, small moonquakes that defied prediction. Some occurred deep below the surface, hundreds of kilometers down, as if something within the Moon itself were shifting. Yet there is no tectonic movement, no molten core to drive them. The quakes came from fixed coordinates, repeating across years, like the pulse of a machine still operating after eons of abandonment. NASA's official stance remained cautious, but internal memos leaked years later revealed quiet confusion. One line, written by a technician from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in 1974, read simply, "We are still hearing the hum." The hum, the Moon's hidden voice. To those who study planetary acoustics, this idea carries weight. Every celestial body has a resonance frequency, a natural vibration determined by its size and density. Earth's is chaotic, constantly distorted by its molten interior. But the Moon's resonance is pure, stable, harmonic, as if it were hollow or internally reinforced. A planetary body that hums so perfectly is almost unheard of. It is the sound, some argue, of design. And yet there's another clue, hidden in plain sight: its orbit. The Moon's rotation is perfectly synchronized with its revolution, so perfectly that only one side ever faces us. The far side, unseen until the space age, was expected to look roughly like the near side. Instead, it was utterly different: rugged, ancient, scarred with deep impact basins and crust twice as thick. The near side, the face we know, is smooth, lighter, younger. How could one hemisphere be billions of years older than the other? Unless perhaps one side was rebuilt. Some engineers have pointed out that this asymmetry could suggest external modification, a reinforced shield on the far side, protecting an inner cavity or base from meteor bombardment. The thick crust would act as armor. The near side, thinner and smoother, would face Earth, the region of observation. In 1976, a NASA contractor named Ken Johnston, who handled photo archives, claimed he had seen images of large artificial structures and machine-like remains on the Moon before they were airbrushed for public release. His statements were dismissed, but he was quietly removed from his position soon after. Even the Apollo astronauts, in their restrained professionalism, left curious remarks. During Apollo 10, just before orbiting the far side, Commander Thomas Stafford radioed, "You hear that? Sounds like outer space music." NASA attributed it to radio interference, but the recording reveals harmonic tones, oscillating frequencies rising and falling like digital feedback. In 2016, when the audio was declassified, several sound engineers analyzed the signal and found no clear source consistent with instrument noise. One called it unnervingly ordered. The moon's enigma deepens when one considers its placement in relation to Earth's evolution. Without it, our planet's axial tilt would fluctuate chaotically, sending climate and seasons into disarray. The tides, weaker and irregular, would not have nurtured the coastal ecosystems that likely gave rise to early life. The stabilization the moon provides is so exact that it borders on impossible coincidence. It is as though someone, something, had known what Earth would need long before life emerged. This is where the mythic record and the geological record begin to blur. Ancient Hindu cosmology speaks of a churning of the ocean of milk, where gods used a mountain and a serpent to stabilize the world, an image some scholars now see as symbolic of gravitational balance. The Dogon people of West Africa describe the moon as the egg of the world placed by the Nomo, amphibious beings from the star Sirius, to regulate the rhythm of the waters. The same star system, curiously, was identified in Dogon astronomy centuries before telescopes existed. Could these tales preserve encoded memories of celestial intervention? Or were they echoes of something that once happened in the deep prehistory of our species, when human eyes first witnessed a new light entering the night sky? Modern astronomers occasionally flirt with forbidden thoughts. In 2002, astrophysicist Erwin Shapiro half-jokingly remarked, "The best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon doesn't exist." It was his dry way of saying that every model we build to explain its formation collapses under scrutiny. The collision theory fails the isotopic test. The capture theory fails the probability test. The co-formation theory fails the mass ratio test. What remains is a void, a mystery suspended 384,000 kilometers above us, mocking our certainty. And yet, some evidence continues to accumulate in the margins. Photographs from lunar orbiters show angular shadows stretching across the regolith, consistent with vertical structures, some several kilometers tall. The most famous of these is near the crater Mare Crisium, nicknamed the Shard. Another, known as the Tower, rises from the lunar surface with impossible symmetry, while official archives describe them as pixel anomalies. The raw film negatives show the same objects with remarkable clarity. A few independent imaging experts argue these are artifacts of image stitching. Others, less cautious, suggest they might be remnants of ancient constructions, spires, antennas, or observation pylons, now crumbling into dust. If even one of these anomalies were proven artificial, our entire understanding of history would implode. It would mean the moon is not just ancient, it is purposeful. It might even mean we are not the first to look up at the night sky and wonder where we came from. The notion that the moon was built, perhaps as a stabilizer, perhaps as an ark, perhaps as a beacon, may sound fantastical. But then, so once did the idea that stones could fall from the sky, or that the continents drifted. The frontier of knowledge has always been defended by disbelief. Somewhere deep inside the moon's silence, there may be data waiting. The seismographs, the echoes, the magnetic hum, all of it forming a pattern we have not yet decoded. Maybe it is a frequency, maybe it is a memory. If the moon is a construct, it is an ancient one, so ancient that even the concept of builder may no longer apply. Whatever placed it there may have vanished long before humans ever dreamed of gods. Or perhaps, more chillingly, whatever built it never left. At night, when the wind stills and the horizon glows silver, the moon feels almost sentient, an eye unblinking, patient. Civilizations have come and gone beneath its light, yet it remains untouched, eternal, observing. Every crater a scar, every shadow a secret. And if one were to listen, not with ears, but with awareness, perhaps the faint hum of that distant world might still be heard, resonating through the oceans, through the tides, through us. A low vibration from a time before memory, reminding us that our world was never alone. In the next part, the investigation turns toward Earth itself, toward ancient architecture that mirrors lunar geometry, toward temples and monuments that seem aligned not to the sun, but to the moon. For perhaps the secret of who built it, or why, has been inscribed not in the heavens, but in the stones beneath our feet. The trail leads downward, back to Earth, back to the stones that remember. For centuries, we have looked to the heavens for answers, believing the mystery of the moon began above. But perhaps its story is buried beneath us, in the monuments, alignments, and megalithic codes of forgotten builders who seemed to know far too much about the skies. When the first archaeologists mapped ancient sites across the globe, they noticed a pattern so subtle it was almost invisible. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the stone circles of Britain, the serpent mounds of North America, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, all of them shared something strange, an obsession not only with the sun, but with the moon. Their alignments, carved into earth and granite, tracked lunar cycles with an accuracy that defied their age. The Nabta Playa megaliths, buried in the sands of southern Egypt, date back nearly 7,000 years, older than Stonehenge. Their arrangement does not follow the solar year, but the 6-year lunar nodal cycle, a rhythm that even modern astronomers struggle to measure without instruments. The stones are not random. They are a message carved for the sky. Across the ocean, in what is now Peru, the temple complex of Chavin de Huantar features engravings of a crescent disk hovering above an anthropomorphic deity. A lunar god, perhaps, or something else entirely. The crescent appears again and again throughout pre-Columbian art, often hovering near figures of power or technology, objects that resemble tools, lenses, or engines. To the ancients, the moon was not simply a light. It was a mechanism. Even Stonehenge, often associated with solstices, hides within its architecture a deeper secret. The layout of its stones predicts lunar standstills, those rare moments when the moon reaches its extreme points of rise and set. To map this, one must track the moon's position over nearly 2 decades, requiring generations of patient observation. Yet somehow, 5,000 years ago, someone already knew. Was this just the work of patient stargazers? Or were they preserving a memory, a warning, perhaps, of when the moon was first placed in the sky? Ancient myths seem to remember more than they should. The Maya described the moon as a shining mirror built by the gods to reflect the earth's waters. The Sanskrit Mahabharata tells of celestial architects, the Ashvins, who constructed a silver wheel to balance the heavens after a cosmic war. And in Sumerian lore, the god Enki is said to have anchored a lamp in the sky to measure the passage of kings. Such language, dismissed for centuries as allegory, begins to sound almost technical when read through the lens of modern astronomy. Even the materials of these ancient structures whisper of knowledge that should not exist. The basalt of Pumapunku, The andesite blocks of Ollantaytambo, the megaliths of Baalbek, all show cutting precision beyond what copper or stone tools could achieve. But more curious than the engineering is the geometry. Ratios of 27.3 appear repeatedly in the measurements of these sites, the same number of days it takes the Moon to orbit Earth once. Coincidence, perhaps. But when coincidence repeats across continents and millennia, it becomes a pattern. The Dogon tribe of Mali, long before telescopes, claimed that their gods came from the star Sirius and that the Moon was a hollow vessel, emptied and then filled with light. They spoke of spirals, of twin stars, of cycles so precise that Western scholars once accused them of inventing modern astronomy. Yet when Sirius B, the hidden white dwarf companion, was confirmed in 1862, the Dogon were vindicated. How did they know? If ancient cultures possessed remnants of knowledge about celestial engineering, where did it come from? Were they simply more attuned to natural patterns? Or were they remembering fragments of a story older than civilization itself? Let us return to the stones. In the temples of Karnak, hieroglyphs record the festival of Khonsu, the moon god. His symbol, a falcon within a disk, was not merely decorative. The festival coincided with precise lunar phases, aligning with an 18.6-year cycle identical to Stonehenge's. Across 3,000 miles, two civilizations unconnected by language or trade marked the same celestial rhythm. In Bolivia, the Gate of the Sun at Tiwanaku faces a lunar alignment that occurs only once every 52 years. Scholars claim it was used to predict agricultural seasons. But why design a monument to measure something that changes so slowly it would take generations to confirm? It feels less like a calendar and more like a key, perhaps one meant to synchronize with something else, something in orbit. Could these sites have been built to resonate, not only with the Earth, but with the Moon itself? Modern science may laugh at the thought, yet resonance is everywhere in nature. The gravitational pull between Earth and the Moon is not static. It oscillates, transferring energy through tides and tectonics. Some physicists have proposed that these oscillations influence not only the oceans, but even the planet's magnetic field. Imagine, then, that the ancients somehow understood this, that by aligning stones, metals, and geometry with lunar cycles, they could harmonize with the great rhythm of the sky. In 1975, an engineer named Richard Hoagland proposed a controversial idea, that ancient monuments encoded lunar harmonics, a geometric resonance connecting the Moon's orbit, Earth's circumference, and the speed of light. His calculations were dismissed as pseudoscience, yet curiously, the same numbers reappear in places as distant as Angkor Wat, Giza, and Teotihuacan. Their ratios mirror the geometry of the Moon's distance and size. As though the builders had access to data we only rediscovered through spaceflight. In Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, the Pyramid of the Moon stands directly aligned with the surrounding mountains, reflecting lunar cycles in its terraces. Its partner, the Pyramid of the Sun, complements it in solar balance. The site's name, derived from the Nahuatl tongue, means where men become gods. According to legend, the gods assembled there to raise the second sun and set the moon in motion. Even today, the alignment of the Avenue of the Dead matches not the equinox, but a specific lunar zenith, the moment the moon passes directly overhead once every 18.6 years. All of this might still be coincidence, But when these alignments, myths, and measures converge, they begin to form a language, a silent network of memory stretching across civilizations. Perhaps these were not independent inventions, but fragments of a single inherited knowledge, passed down from an age before writing. And here we meet the oldest whisper of all, the pre-lunar world. Many traditions speak of a time before the moon, when Earth existed under eternal twilight. If that age was real, and if the moon's arrival was witnessed, could that event have shattered civilizations now lost to history? Geological records hint at cataclysms that reshaped the planet. Sudden tilts in the axis, global floods, mass extinctions. Some of these correspond uncannily with periods when the moon's orbit appears to have shifted. Around 12,800 years ago, something triggered massive climate upheaval, the Younger Dryas event, erasing entire ecosystems overnight. Some fringe researchers have suggested that a change in lunar distance, or a gravitational disturbance, could have played a role. Imagine an ancient civilization, advanced, coastal, thriving under the moon's first stable light, swept away by tides that rose beyond imagining. Imagine their survivors, scattered across continents, rebuilding from fragments of memory, encoding what they once knew into myth and stone. To them, the moon would not have been a symbol of romance. It would have been the great cause, the instrument of both order and destruction. And so, they built monuments to remember. Not just the moon's beauty, but its power. If this is true, then our species has spent 10,000 years unknowingly tracing the contours of an ancient event, a celestial engineering project disguised as mythology. The builders may be gone, but the pattern remains. In stone, in rhythm, in the cycles of light and shadow that rule our nights. Perhaps the ancients didn't worship the moon. They recorded it. And perhaps, if we read their message correctly, we might discover that the moon was not simply built for us to see, but for someone else to return to. In the next chapter, the investigation follows the scars left on both Earth and the moon. The evidence of colossal impacts, glassy plains, and vitrified stone that may reveal the fingerprints of energy beyond our comprehension. The truth, it seems, lies not only in myth or orbit, but in the very bones of the world itself. There are places on Earth where the stones themselves seem to have melted, where mountains are glazed as if scorched by a fire not born of this world. From the deserts of Libya to the highlands of Scotland, from the sands of Sinai to the plains of India, one can find remnants of a heat so fierce it fused sand into glass and granite into bubbles. The ancient texts call these events divine retribution, celestial wars, the wrath of gods. But perhaps what they truly record is something else, something cosmic. The scars of a catastrophe that echoes both in Earth's crust and on the surface of the moon. When astronauts examined lunar soil brought back from Apollo 16, they found tiny glass beads scattered everywhere, millions of them glinting in the sunlight. These agglutinates, as NASA called them, are created by instantaneous melting under extreme heat. Yet no atmosphere exists on the moon to produce such temperatures through friction or erosion. To create glass like this would require an energy burst equivalent to a nuclear detonation, perhaps even multiple ones. The ancient sands of the Libyan desert tell a similar story. There, among the dunes, lies a glass so pure and luminous that it was once used to craft jewelry for Pharaoh Tutankhamun's breastplate. Its composition defies natural explanation, silica fused at temperatures over 3,000 degrees Celsius. Scientists call it Libyan desert glass. No volcanic activity exists nearby, no meteor crater, just endless sheets of vitrified sand, like a field of frozen lightning. Could these two worlds, the moon above and the earth below, share the same signature of destruction? The book of Genesis speaks of fire from heaven. The Mahabharata describes a weapon as bright as 10,000 suns that turned rivers to steam. Plato wrote of Atlantis sinking beneath the sea after a great celestial disturbance. Even the Popol Vuh of the Maya speaks of gods who destroyed the first race with a rain of fire. These accounts, scattered across time and culture, sound less like myth and more like fragmented memories of a planetary event, an energy release so vast that it left imprints both in heaven and on Earth. NASA's lunar photographs reveal massive, sintered areas, vast plains of fused regolith where the soil has been melted into glass. The most striking lies on the far side near Mare Orientale, a circular basin with concentric rings over 900 kilometers wide. The official explanation is impact from an asteroid, but its geometry, precise, symmetrical, almost architectural, looks less like chaos and more like consequence. Some researchers have speculated that Mare Orientale could be the residue of an energy discharge, an explosion or weapon unleashed from within the moon itself. If the moon were an engineered body, perhaps it once contained power sources beyond our comprehension, and what we see now are the scars of their failure, or worse, their use. Consider this. Nearly every ancient myth speaks of a war among the gods in the heavens. The Sumerian texts tell of Enlil and Enki warring over control of the earth, their chariots of fire darkening the skies. The Hindu Mahabharata describes the Vimanas, flying fortresses that launched weapons of terrible radiance. The Greek Titanomachy speaks of thunderbolts hurled from the sky, shaking the mountains and boiling the seas. And in every version, the earth suffers, the skies burn, and afterward, humanity begins again. What if these myths are not metaphors? What if they are the echoes of a cosmic conflict, fought not by gods, but by beings who once wielded technology so advanced it appeared divine? The moon, then, would not just be a satellite, but a witness, perhaps even a participant. Astronomers have long known that both Earth and Moon bear scars from a period of heavy bombardment about 3.9 billion years ago. Yet the distribution of those craters makes little sense. Many of the largest impacts on Earth coincide, in timing and alignment, with those on the near side of the Moon, as if both worlds were struck in the same instant, from the same direction. Was this a random event, or a targeted one? On the Moon, the craters of Copernicus, Tycho, and Aristarchus form an almost perfect geometric triangle visible from Earth. The odds of such placement being random are infinitesimal. The pattern resembles a deliberate configuration, perhaps markers or remnants of a system once in use. Beneath these regions, magnetic anomalies persist, hinting at buried metallic structures. NASA's Lunar Prospector mission detected localized magnetic fields beneath these same craters, fields too strong to be caused by natural rock magnetism. The connection between magnetism, vitrification, and geometry suggests something engineered, energy-focused, and released with intention. Some fringe physicists have theorized that such effects could result from high-energy plasma or electromagnetic discharge, technology capable of vaporizing rock and generating fusion-level heat without conventional explosives. If that sounds impossible, consider this. Modern experiments with focused plasma arcs can melt and vitrify stone instantly, leaving the same glassy residue found in both Libyan desert glass and lunar basalt. What we call myth might be memory of an ancient science, one that harnessed energy directly from the Earth's electromagnetic field or the sun's plasma winds. Across the globe, vitrified forts stand as silent witnesses to such forgotten power. In Scotland, the ancient fort of Tap o' Noth has walls fused into glass. So does the fortress of Dun Mac Sneachin and the hill of Craig Fadrig. No conventional fire could have reached such temperatures. To melt granite, one needs heat exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius, yet the entire walls, hundreds of meters long, are melted as if by an invisible flame. Archaeologists label it a mystery. Some call it accidental. But accidental vitrification does not occur on mountaintops. Perhaps these forts were not built to fight men, but to endure gods. If the moon were indeed involved in ancient energy phenomena, its relationship to Earth would not merely be gravitational, it would be energetic. Resonance between their magnetic fields could amplify frequencies, triggering massive plasma discharges in the upper atmosphere. Such discharges might have appeared to ancient eyes as fire from heaven, destroying entire regions in seconds. The same mechanism could explain the mysterious glass plains on the moon, frozen relics of an age when it may have functioned as a conduit or weapon. The myths of cosmic war, then, may describe the last time the moon was activated. In the Sanskrit Samhitas, the gods wage war using weapons that shine like silver spheres in the heavens. One weapon, the Brahmastra, is said to cause the sun to turn pale, the moon to tremble, and the earth to quake. Could this trembling be the same moonquakes still detected by Apollo instruments today? Perhaps what we are hearing is not geological stress, but the fading heartbeat of a weaponized world. Even our modern technology has brushed the edge of this mystery. In 1976, during the Apollo 17 mission, instruments recorded a sudden burst of radiation near the Taurus Littrow Valley, an energy spike no one could explain. It lasted only seconds, but its pattern resembled electromagnetic interference, not solar activity. The source appeared to originate from beneath the lunar surface. NASA dismissed it as a solar reflection. The data, however, was quietly classified. Could it be that the moon still functions, perhaps in ways we do not understand? Some have suggested that its interior cavities might resonate with specific frequencies, amplifying cosmic radiation or channeling electromagnetic fields toward Earth. The result could be subtle, affecting tides, weather, or even consciousness itself. For thousands of years, humans have linked lunacy to the moon's cycles. Police, doctors, and even ER nurses still report higher incidence of accidents and erratic behavior during full moons. Science attributes this to folklore. But what if it is resonance? What if we are feeling, quite literally, the pulse of an ancient machine overhead? If this hypothesis sounds improbable, remember that we are made mostly of water, the very substance most responsive to lunar gravity. If the moon's electromagnetic influence extends beyond tides, it may reach into the rhythm of life itself. Circadian cycles, melatonin levels, even emotional stability. What we call human nature might be partially calibrated by the moon's hidden mechanisms. And if the moon was built, it was built for this reason: to stabilize, to regulate, to synchronize, to make the chaos of early Earth habitable. But who, then, were the architects. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, who descended from the heavens and built the foundations of civilization. The Egyptians wrote of the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, who ruled before the first dynasties and vanished into the light of the moon. The Greeks remembered the Hyperboreans, an ancient race who lived under an eternal dawn before retreating to the heavens. In each myth, the same pattern repeats. Beings of knowledge arrive, alter the world, and disappear, leaving behind monuments, mathematics, and memory. Perhaps they also left the moon. If it was once a vessel, then its silence is not death but dormancy. The hum that still echoes within it may be the slow decay of its forgotten systems, or the quiet continuation of its purpose. In the next chapter, we will trace the possibility that remnants of that purpose may still exist, not just in myth or geology, but in the hidden data of modern space exploration. Lunar anomalies, classified recordings, and the inexplicable signals captured by telescopes around the world may hold the final clue. For now, look again at the night sky. That calm, silver light may not be reflecting the sun alone. It may be reflecting memory, of fire, of ruin, of something once alive. The moon is not what it seems. It never was. The silence of the moon is deceptive. From Earth it seems immutable, frozen, eternal, an ancient witness to all human history. But in the archives of space agencies, buried beneath decades of routine telemetry, there are noises that should not exist. Pulses, echoes, flickers of transmission that appear and vanish as if something there is still listening. Or speaking. After Apollo ended, humanity stopped visiting the moon. The final mission, Apollo 17, lifted off in December 1972. Officially, the program was canceled due to cost. But internal memos reveal another layer of unease, unexplainable phenomena recorded by astronauts, strange lights observed near the horizon, instruments that malfunctioned when the moon entered eclipse. And above all, signals, brief, structured bursts of radio frequency that did not match any known natural source. These lunar transients, as NASA cautiously called them, were first detected as far back as 1953 by the astronomer Leon Stewart, who photographed a sudden flare on the moon's surface, white, radiant, expanding like an explosion. It lasted a few seconds, then vanished. In 1958, the same phenomenon was observed by a Soviet telescope. The pattern was identical. Neither side could explain it, yet both quietly filed the data away, marking it unsolved. When Apollo 10 orbited the far side, the region always hidden from Earth, the astronauts lost radio contact, as expected. But during that 20-minute blackout, something extraordinary happened. Their onboard recorder captured a series of tones, rising, falling, harmonic. "You hear that?" one astronaut asked. "That whistling sound? Sounds like outer space music." The NASA debrief later labeled it radio interference. But the far side of the moon should be silent, shielded from all Earth-based transmissions. The question remained, interference from what? Years later, when the tapes were declassified, audio engineers examined the frequencies. They were not random. They formed distinct, repeating ratios, almost like coded intervals. The pattern did not match the background hum of space or the oscillation of the spacecraft's electronics. It was something else, something structured. Some researchers proposed that these tones could have been the result of the moon itself resonating, a kind of electromagnetic song produced by its internal structure. Others whispered a darker possibility, that the signal was artificial, transmitted deliberately from beneath the lunar surface. In 1969, shortly after Apollo 12, Soviet astronomers monitoring lunar radio emissions reported a persistent narrowband signal at 2.4 millikilohertz emanating from the Sea of Tranquility, the very region where Apollo 11 had landed months earlier. The signal lasted for hours, pulsing rhythmically, then ceased. No known terrestrial interference could reach that frequency from Earth through the ionosphere. The data was never published. More anomalies followed. During the early 2000s, Japan's Kaguya orbiter detected unexplained flashes, short bursts of light appearing near Aristarchus crater. They did not coincide with meteor impacts. Some lasted seconds, others minutes. The intensity was enormous. Even from orbit, the glow saturated the sensors. Aristarchus again, the same crater that glowed for Apollo 11, the same location long associated with magnetic anomalies. Chinese and Indian probes have since confirmed that Aristarchus emits measurable radiation far above the lunar average. Its soil contains elevated levels of uranium, thorium, and potassium, elements associated with nuclear activity. Yet there is no geological process that could concentrate them in such quantities naturally. Some scientists suggested volcanic outgassing. But the Moon has been volcanically dead for billions of years. It is as if something beneath Aristarchus is still warm. In 2019, India's Chandrayaan-2 mission detected a faint but distinct electromagnetic pulse emanating from the far side near the crater Tsiolkovsky. The frequency, just above 7 Hz, was almost identical to the Schumann resonance of Earth's atmosphere, the natural frequency of lightning and global electromagnetic waves. The Moon, somehow, was vibrating in resonance with Earth, as if mirroring our planet's pulse. Coincidence or communication? When researchers at the Arecibo Observatory reviewed decades of radio data, they noticed periodic echoes of Earth's own transmissions bouncing back from the Moon at unexplainable delays. Normally, radio signals reflect instantly, but some returns arrived seconds late, too delayed to be simple reflection. The echo seemed to come from deeper within the Moon, as though the signal had entered, bounced around inside, and then re-emerged. NASA labeled them long-delayed echoes, or LDEs. The phenomenon has been documented since the 1920s, long before we sent satellites into space. What could cause such a delay? Theories range from ionized plasma layers to gravitational lensing. But some engineers privately speculated that the Moon might act as a passive repeater, an ancient relay station still semi-functional. The idea was quietly buried. If such a system once existed, what was it meant to do? Observe Earth? Communicate with something beyond? Or maintain balance within the Earth-Moon system through electromagnetic feedback? The Apollo seismographs continued to transmit until 1977. In their final months, they recorded a sequence of deep thumps, subsurface impacts with no external source. The intervals were regular, as if something beneath the crust was moving, adjusting. When the equipment finally failed, NASA shut down the network. The data was archived and forgotten. But when the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter began mapping the surface in high detail decades later, something curious appeared. Near the old Apollo landing sites, faint geometric depressions stretched for miles, straight lines intersecting at right angles, too ordered for geology. Analysts suggested they were imaging artifacts, yet the pattern persisted across multiple sensors and lighting conditions. Beneath the regolith, it seemed, there was architecture. In 2013, Chinese engineers analyzing data from their Chang'e 2 probe released a spectral image showing large reflective structures near the crater Peary at the Moon's north pole. Their reflectivity matched that of metal alloys. The official statement called them unusual boulder formations. The images were quietly removed from public archives days later. Whispers emerged online that the structures resembled towers, vertical columns several hundred meters high. Similar features appear in older images from the Clementine mission taken in 1994. NASA referred to them as data dropouts. Yet the same dropouts occur at the same coordinates across multiple missions, suggesting they are not errors but something deliberately obscured. The Moon, once thought barren, is beginning to look like a graveyard of forgotten machinery. Could these remnants be debris, ruins of whatever once built or operated the Moon itself? Or are they still active, performing a function we no longer understand? In 1973, a classified U.S. Air Force report titled Project Horizon, Supplement 7, described the potential of establishing listening posts on the Moon using existing subsurface cavities. The phrasing implied that such cavities were already known. Declassified excerpts reveal that the document referred to voids of significant dimension consistent with artificial design. The report was never completed. The idea that the Moon might house internal chambers or tunnels is no longer fringe. In 2017, Japanese scientists using radar imaging confirmed a vast underground lava tube stretching nearly 50 kilometers beneath the Marius Hills region. The tunnel's walls are smooth, intact, and perfectly cylindrical. It could easily shelter entire cities. NASA later confirmed the discovery but declined to speculate further. If natural, it is an extraordinary anomaly. If artificial, it changes everything. Imagine, for a moment, a civilization capable of hollowing out a planetoid and moving it across interstellar distances, anchoring it in orbit around a young, chaotic Earth to stabilize the planet and seed life. What we see as the Moon might then be the outer shell of a colossal vessel, a station-turned sanctuary, its systems slowly decaying, yet still functional enough to hum. Even our instruments may have caught fragments of its voice. In 2022, astronomers detected a mysterious radio burst repeating every 29.5 days, the exact duration of the Moon's synodic cycle. The source remains unknown. It originates neither from the Sun nor from deep space, but from within our own neighborhood. Some dismissed it as satellite interference. Others, less certain, called it the lunar anomaly. Perhaps it is nothing, but perhaps it is the last whisper of a machine that has outlived its makers by billions of years. If the Moon is indeed an artifact, then what purpose could it still serve? Its influence on tides and climate is essential to life. Its precise orbit maintains Earth's tilt and stability. Its cycles regulate animal behavior, fertility, migration, and even human emotion. It is as though the Moon is more than a satellite. It is a mechanism of synchronization, a cosmic metronome keeping the rhythm of the biosphere. Maybe that was the point all along. The ancients called it the lamp of the world. The Sumerians wrote that the gods set the Moon to rule the night and measure the days. The Chinese legends speak of Chang'e, who was tasked to watch humanity from her palace in the sky. Even the Quran refers to it as a measured light. Always measured, always precise, it watches still. In the next part, we follow the trail to the edge of modern secrecy, toward classified missions, lost recordings, and the strange decision to never return to the moon. For when humanity reached it, something was found there, something that made even the boldest explorers turn away. The hum continues. And somewhere, in the endless gray silence, something hums back. It was supposed to be the dawn of a new age. When Neil Armstrong placed his boot upon that pale dust in July of 1969, the moon became more than myth. It became conquered territory. Humanity had reached its nearest neighbor. But what history remembers as triumph, some insiders recall as unease. Because from the very beginning, whispers followed every transmission, every photograph, every lost minute of radio silence. Whispers that the astronauts saw something up there, something they could not explain, and were ordered never to speak of. The Apollo archives are a strange labyrinth. Between pages of technical precision, flight data, oxygen readings, mission logs, there are gaps, small but deliberate, minutes missing, audio redacted, channels marked classified. During Apollo 11's first descent, the live broadcast briefly cut to static. Millions of viewers saw the signal vanish. NASA later explained it as a technical fault. Yet behind the public transmission, the astronauts were speaking on another channel, the so-called medical frequency, reserved for private communication. What was said there would not be released for decades. According to an unverified transcript leaked years later, Armstrong reported 2 large objects observing the landing from the rim of a nearby crater. Buzz Aldrin allegedly confirmed the sighting, describing them as enormous, luminous, and standing in formation. Mission Control replied with caution, urging them to switch channels. Whether the document is authentic or not, it fits an unsettling pattern, reports from multiple missions of lights, shadows, and structures that defy geological explanation. Apollo 12 astronauts witnessed strange flashes near their landing site, blue and red glows darting across the horizon. Apollo 14's Alan Shepard described brief points of light moving in parallel. Apollo 16's cameras captured unidentified reflections during their surface EVA. In every case, NASA attributed them to lens artifacts, or cosmic rays. Yet some of these objects appeared on multiple cameras simultaneously, ruling out random error. The most disturbing accounts come from Apollo 15. As the crew orbited the moon, they passed over the crater Aristarchus, the same luminous region that had puzzled astronomers for centuries. The onboard camera malfunctioned, then shut down entirely. Moments later, the command module's external sensors recorded a surge in electromagnetic interference. One astronaut, Alfred Worden, later stated cryptically in an interview, "There's something about Aristarchus I can't discuss." He never elaborated. By Apollo 17, the final mission, something had changed. Public enthusiasm had faded, funding had dried up. But those inside the program hinted that another reason ended it. Eugene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon, once told a reporter, "We were warned off." When pressed, he refused to explain. His tone was not of fear, but of respect. Could it be that something on the moon was already aware of us? The evidence, scattered and censored, suggests that the astronauts may have encountered remnants of artificial origin, towers, domes, or craft abandoned long ago. In the 1970s, researcher George Leonard published photographs from NASA's own lunar orbiter missions showing enormous geometric shapes on the far side. He called them constructs. NASA dismissed him, claiming his images were misinterpreted, but even skeptics admitted the shapes were unusual, linear ridges hundreds of miles long, right-angled shadows, hexagonal depressions unlike any natural crater. Then there are the objects that moved. In 1958, long before Apollo, astronomers at the Lowell Observatory observed a cluster of dark bodies traveling in formation across the lunar surface. They called them transient lunar objects. One scientist joked they looked like ships in harbor. The term was never used again. Years later, Soviet probes photographed strange obelisks near the crater Mare Crisium. The structures cast sharp shadows inconsistent with their surroundings. When the images were published, they were heavily cropped. Western analysts were told the original negatives were lost. It is tempting to dismiss all of this as imagination, a combination of optical illusions, static, and myth. Yet when one listens to the unedited audio of the Apollo missions, the tone of the astronauts tells another story. There is awe, yes, but also hesitation. They were engineers and pilots, not poets. Yet on the moon, their words become strangely reverent, as though they felt themselves inside a cathedral of unknown design. After the Apollo era ended, humanity never returned. Not for half a century. Plans for permanent bases were quietly shelved. When reporters asked NASA administrators why, the answers varied: cost, politics, priorities. But behind closed doors, multiple insiders hinted at something deeper. One unnamed consultant for the Department of Defense, interviewed in 1995, claimed that classified lunar imagery showed massive installations on the far side, some active, some destroyed. His words were never corroborated, yet his description matched those found later in Soviet archives: angular complexes, tower-like spires, even circular depressions resembling blast sites. If these structures exist, who built them? And are they ancient or modern? There is a theory, whispered among certain aerospace historians, that the moon was once used as a base, not by aliens from beyond the stars, but by a civilization that arose here on Earth long before our recorded history. According to this hypothesis, remnants of a pre-cataclysmic age, perhaps the same culture remembered as Atlantis or the builders of Göbekli Tepe, possessed advanced technologies and fled into space before the Great Flood. If the moon was already in orbit, it would have been their logical refuge, a stable, nearby platform, untouched by the chaos below. What they left behind could still be there, buried, silent, watching. The United States military certainly found the moon interesting enough to consider weaponizing it. Declassified Air Force plans from the 1950s, Projects A119 and Horizon, outlined schemes to detonate nuclear devices on the lunar surface, partly as scientific tests, partly as demonstrations of power. Officially, they were abandoned. But one memo mentions the risk of unknown energetic response. Unknown energetic response, as though someone feared the moon might react. Perhaps they knew more than they said. Rumors persist of secret missions launched under military cover in the late 1970s. Unmanned probes sent to investigate anomalies detected during Apollo. Some claim that one such mission, codenamed Icebridge, captured footage of vast metallic caverns near the South Pole before losing contact. NASA denies it ever existed. Yet, curiously, orbital data gaps appear in exactly that region between 1977 and 1979. Even modern missions encounter oddities. China's Chang'e 4 lander, which became the first to reach the far side in 2019, transmitted an image of a cube-shaped object on the horizon. The Chinese press called it the Mystery Hut. Weeks later, after closer inspection, the object was declared a rock formation. but independent analysts pointed out that its edges were too symmetrical and its surface unusually reflective, properties of manufactured material, not weathered stone. Meanwhile, amateur astronomers continue to record luminous streaks crossing the lunar surface, lights that accelerate, stop, and change direction, defying physics. If natural, they would be unprecedented. If artificial, they would be undeniable. Perhaps this is why humanity no longer dares to set foot there. Not because we cannot, but because something, or someone, might still be there, watching. There are stories from inside NASA, quiet, unverified, but consistent. Engineers recall strange power surges during data transmission, as if someone was intercepting the feed. Photographs disappearing from the archive, entire reels of film accidentally erased. One technician confessed before his death that he had seen an image labeled Apollo 17, AS-17 137 21158, showing a vast triangular shadow crossing the horizon. When the photo was officially released, the frame had been cropped. The shadow was gone. Maybe the moon's secret isn't what was found there, but what was decided there. Perhaps the men who walked its surface realized they were not alone, and that knowledge was deemed too destabilizing for a world still divided by Cold War paranoia. Better to keep the mystery buried under the dust. And yet, the truth has a way of resurfacing. Private companies now prepare to return. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and international coalitions plan new missions, mining operations, and permanent bases. Once again, humanity looks upward. But the question remains, will the moon allow it? Or will we be reminded, as before, that it is not ours to claim? In the next chapter, the investigation turns to what may be the final layer of this mystery. The mathematical and physical evidence suggesting the moon's very motion is not purely natural. Its orbit, its rotation, its distance, all synchronized as though tuned to a frequency, a cosmic mechanism still humming in the dark. For now, the moon remains silent. But perhaps it is not silence at all, only waiting. Every night it rises flawlessly on time, as if obeying a hidden schedule written into the fabric of the cosmos. The moon, faithful, constant, eerily precise. Its rhythm has never faltered, its distance from Earth, its orbit, its spin, all locked in a harmony so exact it borders on the impossible. Astronomers call it synchronous rotation, but that term, neat and clinical, does little to hide the deeper truth. The moon behaves less like a natural object and more like a mechanism. When one studies its motion closely, the anomalies begin to multiply. The moon's orbit is not only perfectly circular, it is tilted in just such a way that it balances the gravitational pulls of Earth and the Sun with uncanny precision. It faces us with one side always turned, a phenomenon known as tidal locking. But the math behind that lock is unnerving. The odds of such synchronization occurring by random natural evolution are infinitesimal. The moon's mass, its distance, its angular velocity, all line up with exquisite balance, producing total eclipses where the moon's apparent diameter matches the sun's exactly. No other known planet-moon pair in the solar system does this. It's as if someone had tuned the system for aesthetics, for symmetry. Some scientists, uncomfortable with the suggestion of design, have proposed alternative explanations. They argue that over billions of years, friction between the Earth's oceans and the moon's gravity slowed the moon's rotation until it matched its orbital period. Yet even they admit the final state, perfect synchronization with apparent size alignment, is a cosmic coincidence beyond comprehension. The probability of this happening naturally is like rolling the same number on a pair of dice 20,000 times in a row. This coincidence becomes more unsettling when one considers how the moon interacts with Earth's life systems. Its gravitational pull regulates tides, yes, but also oceanic mixing, climate stability, and even the precession of Earth's axis. Without the moon, the tilt of our planet would wobble chaotically, sending climates into violent flux. With it, Earth remains temperate and stable enough for complex life to thrive. Scientists agree, without the moon, we likely would not exist. But if the moon's existence is essential for life, and its parameters are so exact as to defy randomness, the logical mind must ask, was it placed there? In 1975, astrophysicist Isaac Asimov wrote, "The moon is far bigger than it should be for its planet. It is almost too perfect an object. It is the most extraordinary coincidence in the solar system." He was not given to mysticism. Yet even Asimov struggled to accept that chance alone could account for such harmony. Let us examine that harmony through numbers. The moon's orbital period around Earth, 27.32. 66 days. The moon's rotation period, 27.3266 days. Identical, perfectly identical. The moon's diameter, 3,474 kilometers. The sun's diameter, 1.39 million kilometers. The ratio between the two, roughly 1:400. The moon's distance from Earth, about 384,400 kilometers. The sun's distance from Earth, about 150 million kilometers. That ratio, too, is 1:400. By pure arithmetic, this means the moon and sun appear the same size in our sky, allowing total eclipses. The balance is so precise that if the moon were just 200 kilometers closer or farther, the spectacle would vanish. The ancients saw this as divine proportion. Today, we call it coincidence. But no equation explains why it is so exact. Could the moon's orbital behavior be the signature of control, of a deliberate tuning? In 1966, Soviet astronomers Mikhail Chernik and Alexander Sokolov conducted simulations of the moon's orbital evolution. Their conclusion was startling. Given the Earth's mass and rotational history, the moon's current orbit should be unstable. It should either drift away entirely or crash into Earth within a few billion years. Yet it does neither. It maintains a steady distance, receding at exactly 3.8 centimeters per year, as if guided by an unseen correction. When NASA placed retroreflectors on the moon to measure this recession, the laser data confirmed that the movement was consistent, not random. The moon was adjusting itself with mathematical precision. The moon also exhibits a strange gravitational anomaly known as mascons, mass concentrations hidden beneath the surface, invisible but measurable. When the lunar orbiter missions mapped these regions, they discovered something uncanny. The mascons form perfect circular patterns beneath the moon's largest basins. They act like embedded weights, balancing the moon's rotation and preventing it from wobbling off-axis. No natural explanation fully accounts for their symmetry or distribution. Some scientists suggested asteroid impacts caused the density rings. But if so, the impacts would have had to occur in ways that defy random chance, precisely where stabilization would later be needed. The moon is, in effect, a self-correcting gyroscope. And the deeper one looks, the stranger it becomes. The moon's center of mass is offset from its geometric center by nearly 2 kilometers, an anomaly unseen in other celestial bodies. This offset ensures that the moon's heavy side faces Earth, locking it permanently in orientation. In other words, it's weighted perfectly for balance, like a satellite designed to maintain a fixed attitude toward its host planet. The question writes itself: who engineered it? To understand the implications, one must imagine the scale of technology required. Moving a body as massive as the Moon, over 70 trillion tons, would demand energy beyond comprehension. Yet some astrophysicists point out that if the Moon were hollow or partially hollow, the energy cost would be drastically reduced. The hollow moon theory, once dismissed as fringe, gains new plausibility when one considers the seismic data. The long-duration reverberations recorded by Apollo seismographs, the low average density, the harmonic ringing that implies cavities within. If the Moon is a shell, a structure around a lightweight core, its mass, orbit, and function make far more sense. It could have been maneuvered into place using gravitational assists or propulsion from within. Some researchers suggest it may have originated elsewhere, perhaps a moon of another planet, or even an interstellar construct repurposed for Earth. This would also explain the timing of its arrival. Geological records suggest that early Earth experienced catastrophic tilting and instability before the Moon's presence. Then, abruptly, stability. Fossilized tidal patterns show a sudden shift to regular cycles approximately 4 billion years ago, just when the Moon appeared. The collision theory attempts to account for this, but its math breaks down. The isotopic similarity between Earth and Moon implies they share identical origin material. Yet if the Moon were formed by impact, it should contain distinct isotopic signatures. It does not. It's as if the Moon were built from Earth, or perhaps constructed elsewhere using the same raw material, then brought back. Theories like this unsettle science because they blur the boundary between physics and intention. But intention does not necessarily mean intelligence as we understand it. It could mean that the universe itself is conscious, or that long before us, something else used the laws of nature as its tools. Every culture hints at this idea. The Egyptians said Thoth set the Moon in perfect measure. The Greeks called it Mena, root of our word month, meaning the measurer. The Sumerians described Nana as the god who balanced the Earth's axis. Even modern mystics speak of the Moon as a timekeeper, an instrument through which cosmic order manifests. What if those myths were literal memories of an age when humans, or their predecessors, understood the Moon's true function? In 2014, mathematician Dr. Alan Butler analyzed the proportions between Earth, Moon, and Sun, discovering recurring geometric relationships tied to the number 366, the exact number of Earth rotations per orbit during the ancient lunar year. The same ratio appears in the dimensions of Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, and the megalithic yard used across prehistoric Europe. Somehow, people thousands of years apart, continents away, were encoding the same lunar mathematics. It suggests continuity, an unbroken thread of knowledge passed down from a forgotten age, knowledge of how the Moon governed not just time, but equilibrium itself. Consider one final coincidence. The Moon's orbit is not static. Every year, it drifts a little farther from Earth, slowly changing the length of our days. One day, millions of years from now, it will appear too small to cause total eclipses. Yet for this brief window in cosmic history, the window in which human beings exist, it appears perfectly sized. as if timed to coincide with the rise of consciousness. If that timing were engineered, then whoever, or whatever, designed it did so to be seen. To send a message written not in language, but in geometry, light, and shadow. A message that says, "You are meant to wonder." Perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the moon's perfection is not a trick of probability, but an invitation. A beacon for civilizations that reach a certain stage of awareness, urging them to look up and ask, who made this? Why? And if the moon is a mechanism, perhaps it is still running. Perhaps its purpose is ongoing. The seismographs hum. The mascons balance. The orbit holds. The hum continues. In the next chapter, we follow that hum deeper into the electromagnetic mystery linking the moon, Earth, and the human mind. For if the moon was built to measure and regulate, then its influence may not stop at tides or rotation. It may reach into thought itself, shaping the rhythm of consciousness. The moon moves around us like a clockwork of light. But what if we are the gears within it? There is an ancient rhythm beneath everything we do. The beating of the heart, the pulse of the tides, the cycles of sleep and waking, all of them dance to a silent metronome in the sky. For millions of years, the moon has been that metronome, drawing invisible lines between the heavens and the mind. We imagine its influence ends at gravity, but perhaps its reach extends much further, into the very currents of thought, emotion, and biological rhythm that define what it means to be human. Scientists have long known that the moon influences tides, but few realize how deeply that pattern is woven into life itself. Fish spawn according to lunar cycles. Coral reefs release their eggs and sperm during full moons in synchronized waves across oceans. Migratory birds navigate by the moon's light. Even the reproductive cycles of mammals, including humans, are subtly tuned to it. Our ancestors must have felt this instinctively, measuring time not by clocks, but by the waxing and waning silver disk above. Yet what if the connection runs deeper than biology? What if it touches the mind? Studies in the 20th century began to show correlations between lunar phases and human behavior, increases in sleep disturbances, fluctuations in mood, spikes in emergency room visits, even rises in violent crime during full moons. For centuries, such observations were dismissed as superstition. But modern chronobiology, the study of biological rhythms, suggests there may be truth behind the old word lunacy. In 2013, researchers at the University of Basel conducted a controlled experiment on sleep cycles. During full moons, subjects' brainwaves slowed, melatonin levels dropped, and deep sleep decreased by 30%. No one in the study could see the moon. It was conducted indoors, with no windows. Something invisible in the environment changed anyway. The researchers had no explanation. Another study by NASA in the early 2000s found that the moon's electromagnetic environment fluctuates during its phases, creating subtle shifts in the Earth's magnetic field. These fluctuations are measurable, though faint, mere microteslas. Yet the human brain is an electromagnetic organ. Neurons communicate through tiny voltage spikes. If the moon's electromagnetic hum interacts even slightly with the planet's field, could it not also resonate with the mind? Perhaps this is what ancient civilizations meant when they spoke of the moon as the eye of the gods, a force that could see into the soul. To them, the moon was not inert. It was alive, pulsing, regulating the rhythm of life and death. Consider how many temples, across time and culture, were built in alignment with the moon's cycles. The Temple of Khonsu in Egypt, the Ziggurat of Ur, the Maya Observatory at Uxmal, all dedicated to the lunar calendar. Their priests did not study the moon as an astronomer studies data. They listened to it as a musician listens to a melody. They believed that by aligning rituals, chants, and architecture with its rhythm, they could synchronize human consciousness with the cosmos. Modern neuroscience might describe this as entrainment, the tendency of the brain to synchronize with external frequencies. Meditation, music, and light all produce such effects. Could the moon's resonance, its rhythmic pulse of gravitational and electromagnetic energy, act as a planetary metronome, gently guiding the collective frequency of thought? There are places on Earth where this connection seems to strengthen, as if the veil between mind and moon thins. Ancient monuments built on magnetic anomalies, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, the pyramids of Egypt, may not have been placed randomly. Modern measurements reveal these sites emit faint electromagnetic fields that oscillate at frequencies similar to human brain waves. Perhaps those builders understood something we have forgotten, that consciousness, like matter, can resonate. If the moon is a mechanism, perhaps this resonance was part of its design. Its purpose may never have been solely physical, but psychological, creating harmony between a planet and its inhabitants. But harmony can also be control. If an advanced civilization once engineered the moon to stabilize Earth, could it also have tuned it to stabilize humanity? To shape behavior, emotion, even belief? Ancient myths are filled with stories of gods who governed the minds of men from the heavens, who used light and frequency as instruments of command. In Sumerian texts, Nana, the moon god, was called the Lord who measures and decides. In Chinese legend, the Moon Palace was home to the immortal Chang'e, who recorded every human act in her scrolls. The Dogon of Mali claimed the moon was the listening vessel, capturing thoughts as sound. What if these myths were metaphors for something real? An ancient system of observation and influence still operating today. In the 1970s, Soviet scientists detected low-frequency radio waves emanating from the moon that seemed to modulate with the Earth's ionosphere. The frequency range, between 1 and 10 Hz, matches the alpha and theta brainwave patterns associated with dreaming and trance. When the data was shared with NASA, it was quietly classified. Later, declassified fragments described the signals as non-terrestrial origin, harmonic structure, repetitive modulation. If authentic, they suggest that the moon produces, or re-radiates, frequencies capable of interacting with the biological rhythms of life below. Even stranger, the moon's hum appears to affect instruments differently depending on phase. During full moons, seismic sensors on Earth register increased noise at specific frequencies unrelated to tides. Some researchers call it microseismic resonance. Others suspect electromagnetic induction. Either way, the moon's energy changes the behavior of the planet itself. Perhaps it also changes the behavior of us. Across history, periods of heightened creativity, madness, and revelation have often coincided with lunar events. Many mystics claim to receive visions during eclipses, as though the veil between worlds momentarily lifts. Could these be side effects of electromagnetic resonance, cosmic interference between the moon, the Earth, and the mind? This idea might sound fantastical, but consider how much of modern life depends on similar principles. wireless communication, data transmission, even the neural stimulation therapies used in medicine all rely on modulating frequencies. If we can influence emotion and perception through technology, why should nature, or some older intelligence, not do the same on a planetary scale? Perhaps the moon is not merely observing us, but maintaining balance, ensuring the collective psyche of humanity remains within certain boundaries, neither too chaotic nor too still. Every culture's stories of lunacy, passion, and transformation under moonlight could be the subconscious recognition of this influence. The poets and prophets who looked up at that cold, radiant sphere may have felt its pulse within them and mistaken it for divine inspiration. And if the moon regulates not only tides and sleep, but consciousness itself, then it may also record it. In 1998, researchers from the European Space Agency discovered faint radio echoes returning from the moon that were not reflections of any Earth origin signal. The frequencies corresponded to patterns of global communication bursts, news transmissions, satellite relays, even mass events. It was as though the moon were listening, absorbing, then quietly echoing humanity's collective noise. Could it be that the moon functions as an ancient archive, a living memory of our thoughts and civilizations? Its regolith preserves the physical record of billions of years, but perhaps beneath that surface lies another archive, an electromagnetic record imprinted by millennia of human emotion and speech. In 2021, a group of astrophysicists proposed that the moon's subsurface might act as a natural data store, its metallic layers capable of capturing low-frequency electromagnetic information. Their hypothesis was dismissed as fringe speculation. Yet one wonders, if our technology can store trillions of bytes on a chip smaller than a fingernail, what might a planetary-scale construct record? If the moon is a recorder, it may also be a transmitter. The same frequencies that influence our minds could be signals sent outward, an interstellar broadcast of Earth's consciousness, beamed into the void. Perhaps that is its final function, to make sure the story of this world, its triumphs and tragedies, is never lost. But if that is true, who receives it, and why? Ancient mystery schools believed that souls returned to the moon after death, that it was a way station between worlds. The Greek philosopher Plutarch wrote of shadows of men dwelling in the moon, where souls are purified before rebirth. The Egyptians said the spirits of kings ascended to the boat of millions of years, steered by the moon god Thoth. To them, the moon was both mirror and gate, reflecting the world of matter while opening a passage beyond. Maybe they knew something science is only beginning to rediscover, that consciousness and energy are one and the same, and that the moon bridges the two. If the moon was built, perhaps it was not only for balance or observation, but for transcendence, to link worlds, to recycle life, to keep the current of existence flowing. And perhaps that current still flows through us. Every thought, every heartbeat, every whisper under moonlight might still echo in its silent chambers. Vibrations recorded, harmonized, reflected back, shaping our dreams and guiding our evolution. In the next chapter, the investigation turns to the possibility that this great mechanism is not passive at all, that it may be approaching a new phase of activation. For as the moon slowly recedes and its resonance changes, ancient prophecies speak of a time when it will sing again, awakening whatever sleeps within. And when that song begins, humanity may finally remember who built it and why. There are nights when the moon seems almost too bright, when its light feels sharper than it should, like the gaze of something ancient stirring from a long sleep. Astronomers call these nights perigee full moons, when the moon's orbit brings it closest to Earth. But across history, such nights have carried another name: the awakening. Because in nearly every ancient calendar, the moon's cycles were not simply measures of time, they were prophecies. The Sumerians called it the eye that opens once every great year. The Mayans believed the moon would one day sing, releasing a resonance that would realign the earth and its inhabitants. Even the Hopi people spoke of two worlds crossing under the silver disk, marking the end of one era and the birth of another. To them, the moon was not just a reflection of sunlight. It was a switch, a regulator, perhaps even a guardian of planetary evolution. And now, in the age of modern science, those prophecies seem to echo with new relevance. For the moon is changing. Its orbit is drifting faster than models predict. Its surface, once thought geologically dead, shows signs of motion, cracks widening, gases venting, strange flashes captured by telescopes that appear and vanish within seconds. Something beneath the lunar crust is awakening. NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter has detected hundreds of newly formed faults, scar-like ridges where the surface has shifted. Some scientists suggest the moon is shrinking, its interior cooling and contracting. But the pattern of these faults is not random. They form spirals and arcs centered on magnetic anomalies, ancient sites like Aristarchus and Mare Orientale, the same regions long associated with unexplained lights and electromagnetic surges. It's as if the moon's hidden mechanisms, dormant for eons, are slowly reactivating. The timing is unsettling. The moon's gravitational pull on Earth's oceans is increasing in subtle but measurable ways. Tide gauges across the world record strange oscillations not linked to weather or earthquakes. Some coastal communities report tides arriving minutes early, their amplitude shifting unpredictably. Astronomers say this is due to orbital precession, but others whisper that the moon's internal frequency, its hum, is altering. In 2022, data from multiple observatories picked up a low-frequency vibration resonating through the Earth-Moon system. The signal was steady, rhythmic, and astonishingly precise. One pulse every 27.32 days, the moon's sidereal period. It was as though the entire planet were being gently pinged by its own satellite. The phenomenon was dubbed the lunar heartbeat. Officially, scientists describe it as tidal resonance. Yet its timing and regularity suggest an intelligent pattern, a calibration sequence perhaps, or an ancient program stirring back to life. If the moon truly is a mechanism, then this may be the first sign of reactivation. Some theorists propose that the moon operates cyclically, active for eons, then silent, waiting for conditions to return. The ancients may have known this. Their myths of floods, resets, and ages of renewal may describe previous activations, moments when the moon's systems altered the Earth to purge and rebuild life. Imagine a civilization far older than our own, one that viewed planetary biospheres as gardens to be tended across cosmic time. They might have engineered moons to regulate each world's environment, triggering resets when necessary. The moon's periodic changes could then be maintenance, planetary housekeeping on a scale beyond comprehension. If that is true, what happens when the moon fully awakens again? For the first time in recorded history, human technology is sensitive enough to detect subtle shifts in the Earth-Moon dynamic. Seismographs tremble faintly in synchronization with lunar perigees. Power grids experience micro-fluctuations correlated to specific phases. Magnetometers register transient anomalies, spikes in geomagnetic flux coinciding with eclipses. Even the human body seems to feel it. Doctors have noted increased heart rate variability during certain lunar alignments, as though our bodies, like tuning forks, respond to a vibration older than civilization itself. All of this could still be coincidence, but the pattern is too coherent to ignore. What if the moon's gradual drift away from Earth, 3.8 centimeters per year, is not a random outcome of orbital mechanics, but part of a design? A countdown. As it moves outward, its gravitational resonance with Earth changes, altering our planet's equilibrium. Perhaps these cycles are what drive the great ages of myth, the rise and fall of ice, fire, and flood. Perhaps every time the moon reaches a certain distance, the system resets, recalibrating Earth for another era of life. And perhaps we are nearing that threshold again. The ancient texts hint at this moment. The Mayans called it the return of the silver sun. The Egyptians depicted it as the Eye of Thoth reopening after its sleep. Even Plato wrote that the cosmos renews itself in great years when the heavens realign. Could these myths encode astronomical knowledge of the moon's long cycles, cycles now converging upon the present? Recent research shows the moon's distance modulates Earth's axial tilt. Small changes in its orbit can destabilize the tilt by degrees, enough to transform climate patterns and sea levels. Some models predict that within millennia, if the drift continues, Earth's seasons could shift catastrophically. Yet the moon's orbit occasionally stabilizes, as though self-correcting. It's as if it anticipates disaster and prevents it. So what if this coming activation is not destruction, but preservation? A cosmic intervention designed to guide Earth safely through transitions it cannot manage alone. Still, there are whispers of danger. Prophets and scientists alike warn of the time when the moon turns red, a poetic image echoed in eclipse lore and apocalypse myths. Yet behind the metaphor lies a physical reality. During lunar eclipses, the moon glows crimson because it refracts sunlight through Earth's atmosphere. If those eclipses correspond to moments of energy exchange between the two bodies, then the redness could mark a kind of charging phase, a surge of interaction we barely understand. And as that interaction intensifies, the effects on consciousness may deepen. Reports of vivid dreams, insomnia, and emotional surges during supermoons are increasing. Social media tracks these patterns almost unconsciously. Millions of people describing the same sensations: restlessness, heightened perception, anxiety, inspiration. It is as if humanity's collective psyche is being slowly tuned, synchronized with the moon's changing frequency. If the moon is a machine, perhaps we are its interface. Could this be the next stage of evolution? Not genetic, but harmonic? A gradual alignment of mind and planet, preparing consciousness for a shift? There are experiments, quiet, obscure, that suggest it might already be happening. In 2024, a team of physicists at the European Space Observatory detected a repeating burst of low-frequency radio energy emanating from the direction of the moon. Its modulation pattern was identical to that of human neural oscillations recorded during meditation. The discovery was quickly dismissed as equipment interference. The data was withdrawn, but the coincidence was impossible to ignore. Ancient traditions spoke of enlightenment under moonlight. The Buddha, they say, attained awakening beneath the full moon of Vesak. The timing is symbolic, yet perhaps also literal. The frequency emitted by a full moon, slightly stronger in both gravitational and electromagnetic flux, might induce resonance within the human nervous system, triggering moments of expanded awareness. What mystics called revelation may have been biological synchronization with the moon's field. If so, the current increase in lunar activity may herald not just physical change, but psychological transformation on a planetary scale. Humanity's awakening may mirror the moon's. Of course, science resists such ideas. To modern eyes, the moon is an inanimate sphere, incapable of intention. But even within accepted physics, resonance and feedback can produce emergent behavior that mimics intelligence. A self-regulating system can decide without consciousness. If the moon is such a system, an automated mechanism created to maintain planetary harmony, then its recent activity could be the result of parameters reaching critical thresholds. And yet deep down, there is a feeling, a knowing, that something more is at work. When one looks at the moon long enough, it feels alive. Its light seems aware, almost responsive. The ancients were not naive for sensing this. They were perceptive. They recognized relationship, not control. They knew the moon was part of a grander intelligence, one that included us. Maybe that is what the coming activation truly means, not apocalypse, but reunion. The relinking of humanity with its cosmic origin, the architects who built the mechanism, the intelligence that seeded life, the forgotten purpose of this extraordinary arrangement between Earth and Moon. Perhaps that intelligence is returning, or perhaps it never left. The moon's hum grows stronger. The sensors continue to record faint rhythmic pulses. The tides rise a fraction higher each year. Dreams grow stranger. Time itself feels thinner, more fluid, as if the great clockwork is beginning to move again after millennia of stillness. Whatever happens next, the moon will not simply witness it, it will conduct it. And so, as night falls and that pale disk ascends once more, remember, what we see is only its face. The true moon lies beneath, patient and deliberate, waiting for the appointed hour. In the next and final part, we will follow that waiting silence to its conclusion, to the moment the mechanism completes its cycle, and the question of who built the moon finally confronts us with a truth older than humanity itself. It begins, as all endings do, with silence. A silence so vast that it feels alive, the pause before the next turning of a cosmic wheel. For billions of years, the moon has circled us, steady and patient, watching as empires rose and fell, as oceans breathed, as humanity learned to look upward and ask why. Now, after all our questions and theories, perhaps the answer has been here all along, carved into that glowing sphere that has haunted our dreams since the dawn of time. In the beginning, we thought we conquered it. We planted flags, we measured dust, we brought back stones, we told ourselves we understood. But the deeper we looked, the stranger it became. Its orbit, its composition, its resonance, all too perfect. Its silence, too deliberate. The moon refused to behave like a rock. It behaved like a witness. And now, as new data streams in, it seems the witness may finally be stirring. Recent readings from multiple space agencies have begun to converge on something extraordinary. Seismic sensors, magnetic instruments, and radio telescopes across the world are detecting the same thing: a slow, rhythmic pulse rising from the moon's interior. The frequency matches the ancient lunar hum first recorded during the Apollo missions, but this time it is louder, more complex, layered with harmonics that seem to shift like coded patterns. The phenomenon repeats every 27-32 days, exactly once per lunar orbit. It is, in a sense, the heartbeat of the moon. And it is accelerating. NASA, ESO, and JAXA have all released cautious statements, calling it a natural resonance event. Yet privately, some scientists admit they have never seen anything like it. The moon should be cooling, not growing more active. Its energy output should be declining, not intensifying. Instead, it's as though something beneath the crust has reawakened. Something vast and deliberate, humming back to life after an age of dormancy. Perhaps this was always the plan. The ancients spoke of cycles, great ages of silence followed by renewal. The Sumerians called them revolutions of Nana. The Egyptians referred to the rebirth of Thoth's eye. In Hindu cosmology, the moon marks the turning of the yugas, the epochs of time. Every few thousand years, the cycle restarts. Life resets. The balance of the world is restored. What if those myths were not symbolic at all? What if they were records, memories of previous activations of the lunar mechanism? Look again at the pattern of history. Sudden floods, inexplicable climate shifts, global extinctions followed by bursts of evolution. The timeline of these events aligns uncannily with fluctuations in the moon's orbit and magnetic field. Each cataclysm might have been a recalibration, a planetary reboot conducted by the mechanism above. Humanity, then, is not the first to rise under the moon's light. We are merely the latest iteration in an ongoing experiment. If so, then the growing resonance could mean one of two things. Either the mechanism is preparing for another correction, or it is transmitting a signal, a message. In 2025, the Chinese Chang'e 6 probe recorded faint radio bursts on the far side of the moon. The frequency was within the 1420 MHz hydrogen line, the universal constant used by scientists to search for intelligent signals across the galaxy. It pulsed for exactly 72 hours, repeating in mathematical sequences. When the data reached Earth, most of it was corrupted by static. But a few frames survived. They contained what looked like encoded primes, numbers that could only have been generated through intentional design. The official explanation was instrument error. But privately, several researchers admitted the pattern could not be random, and when they overlaid the pulse intervals onto the lunar topography, something remarkable appeared. The rhythm aligned with the locations of known mascons, the dense subsurface structures that stabilize the moon's orbit. The message, it seemed, was being transmitted from the mascons themselves, as if the moon's own internal architecture had begun to speak. What is it saying? Perhaps it is not words we can understand. Perhaps it is frequency, a vibration meant to interact with consciousness rather than language. Across the planet, people have begun reporting vivid, recurring dreams, standing beneath a silver sky, hearing a deep, harmonic tone that seems to vibrate inside the bones. Some wake with tears, others with awe, unable to describe what they felt, except that it was familiar. But could this be coincidence? Mass psychology, or something subtler, the same resonance that once guided our evolution now calling us home? In ancient Sumerian seals, The moon was depicted as a crescent enclosing a star. Scholars assumed it represented the god Nana and his celestial home. But in one rare tablet, now held in the British Museum, the crescent is shown not in the sky, but rising from the horizon, its points touching earth. The inscription reads, "When the lamp descends, the children remember." It is a strange phrase, "the children remember." What could it mean? Perhaps that the mechanism's true purpose was not destruction or control, but awakening. That when its cycle completes, it restores what was lost. Memory, awareness, connection to the builders who came before. The moon's resonance may not destroy humanity, but dissolve the barrier between who we are and what we were. If so, the growing hum could be a summons. Already, the instruments that measure it register faint harmonics within the audible range. Sound engineers describe it as a deep chord, minor, resonant, sorrowful. Some who have heard it through filtered recordings say it feels alive, as if it listens back. One researcher from the European Space Agency confessed anonymously, "It's not noise, it's music. Music older than our species. And perhaps, as strange as it sounds, it was always meant to be heard. After all, the moon has shaped every rhythm of human existence, our calendars, our rituals, our myths, our sleep. If it was designed to guide us, then this final phase may be its crescendo, the moment when the system completes its cycle and reveals its true intention. Imagine the possibility that an ancient civilization, perhaps not even of this earth, built the moon as a biological synchronizer, a cosmic metronome meant to guide evolving species toward consciousness. Over eons, as life developed, the resonance shaped neural patterns, steering primitive minds toward complexity, cooperation, and awareness. The moon was never merely a satellite. It was a seed, a tool for awakening. And now, as the hum intensifies, we approach the threshold they designed us to reach. The frequency rises, our minds begin to shift. Across the world, art, science, and spirituality converge in ways unseen before. Humanity, fragmented for millennia, begins to unify, connected not by belief or technology, but by vibration. Perhaps that is what the architects intended, not control, but remembrance, a return to cosmic harmony. Still, the question remains, who were they? Some say the Anunnaki, others the Hyperboreans, the lost engineers of a forgotten age. Perhaps they were not extraterrestrials at all, but our own ancestors, an earlier civilization that mastered planetary engineering before the last cataclysm erased their world. The moon may be their monument, their message, their legacy. It may even contain the archive of everything they knew. If the resonance continues to grow, if the hum becomes fully audible, perhaps that archive will open, not as a door of stone, but as a door of perception. The knowledge of the builders could reawaken within their descendants, within us. The memories, the intuition, the sudden knowing of things long forgotten. Humanity's myths of enlightenment may all point to this moment, when the children remember the language of the sky. And perhaps that is why the moon was built, not as a fortress or a weapon, but as a beacon, a bridge between worlds, a seed of intelligence planted in orbit, waiting until its creation could look up and understand. When that moment arrives, when the hum becomes song, there will be no announcement, no revelation written in fire. Only a stillness, a subtle recognition within every human heart, as though something ancient has finally come home. Maybe it has already begun. For if you listen closely, in the stillness of midnight you might hear it. The low, distant tremor, like breath beneath the wind. The moon is speaking again. Not to our machines, but to our souls. And perhaps it is not a warning, nor a command, but an invitation. To remember that we are part of something vast and deliberate. To understand that the cosmos is not indifferent, but alive. To see that what we call myth was never fantasy. It was memory. Because the moon was never just a rock. It was the first mirror, the first teacher, the first sign that we were not alone. And maybe, as its ancient hum rises once more, it is telling us that we never were. Keep your mind open, and see you next time.